Welcome to SF Commercial Property Conversations with Bruce Bean, where Bay Area investments meet expert insights. Get ready to unlock the strategies of commercial real estate success.
So today I'm very happy to be introducing you to Rod Linhares. Rod is an expert in the field of nonprofit fundraising. However, there are so many crossovers in terms of nonprofit and for-profit fundraising that I think this will be a very educational and interesting conversation for all that are listening. So Rod, welcome to the San Francisco Commercial Properties Podcast.
Thank you very much, Bruce. Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm excellent. So if you wouldn't mind, just give us a little background on where you came from and kind of a little history of your work world and so forth.
Certainly. Born and raised in the Bay Area, grew up in Pacifica, actually, and lived here my entire life, except when I went away to school, went to college in the Midwest, and lived for a year in Santa Barbara. But other than that, I have been lived in the Bay Area my entire life. Worked in investments for a little bit more than a year, but really for the last 3 decades plus, I've worked in the nonprofit arena, fundraising for nonprofit organizations. And I've been very fortunate to work with the entire spectrum of nonprofits, whether it be educational institutions, hospitals, social service organizations, religious entities, environmental organizations. It's been fascinating because of its diversity, and I've just been so fortunate. It's always it's been a source of great interest and curiosity. It's fantastic. Wonderful people trying to do fantastic things.
Well, and as we talked previously, you said that in fundraising, as with whether it's nonprofit or for-profit, it's people give to people. So can you explain that a little bit for us?
Yes, fundraising really is based upon relationships, whether it is nonprofit or for-profit. Certainly, there's something to be said for how appealing the objective that somebody is raising money for is, but really fundraising is based on relationships. I've often said that if you have two kind of competing interests, if you will, and one has persons who are highly respected and such advocating a particular fundraising objective, and scenario two, there are people that are, somewhat credible, them pretty well, but they're advocating something that is a very, very appealing need. The fundraising entity that will be more successful almost invariably is the one in which the people advocating it are respected, are leaders, and persons with whom you have a very, very strong relationship. Because one of the basic maxims of fundraising is, again, people give to people. And as we might also think, people give because they are asked. That's something that, a lot of people are often hesitant to ask and so on and so forth. But people give very simply because someone whom they respect, someone whom they trust, is asking them to contribute.
So in the real estate world, in the commercial real estate world, oftentimes you're running into someone that you don't really know. You might have a slight relationship with them, but how would you suggest that you build that relationship so that you get to the point where you could ask them to invest in, say, a multifamily apartment building or something like that?
If I could take one quick diversion, if you will, you use the word invest, and I like to refer to, even in the nonprofit arena, when people make a gift, I always term it as they are investing in something about which they care deeply and feel good about and want to grow. So it's very interesting that, in nonprofit and in for-profit, the verb, if you will, to me at least, is an investment. So I appreciate that. As far as relationships, it's like I always feel, to a very, very close degree, it's almost the same as in real life. You don't want to rush a relationship. There has to be rapport built. There has to be trust built. And that rapport can be built in a variety of ways, whether it's finding commonality, whether it's finding that there's a something that you maybe something that you've been involved with, that person or persons has been involved with before. And it's obviously clearly demonstrating to the person or persons with whom you're speaking, the very, very genuine, significant nature of that which it is you're looking for him or her to get involved in. So if you can show that there's a tremendous benefit to their getting involved, I'm kind of fast forwarding a little bit, but if you can show that there's a tremendous benefit in terms of what it is that the person that you're reaching out to, what it is they want out of this. Is it purely financial? Is it something of a social move forward? Whatever the case may be, if you can kind of asking a lot of questions, it always helps to understand before trying to be understood. So asking questions about the individual, asking questions about his or her goals in a particular situation, and then trying to match that to what it is you would like to have happen. That's the best way, I feel, to build a relationship. But it comes back in many cases to finding common ground, and you do that through listening.
Yeah, no, I think that is so critical. And I think a giant error that a lot of people kind of fall over in terms of they try and make their presentation, they make their case, they're putting out their information, they're going on and on about what a great deal this is. And yet the other person, the person that they're soliciting, may have zero interest in this, but they have not even asked them the question. So I think that relationship building, as you say, is so critical to the whole process. In other words, you're saying, what was your line? You said, you basically said, listen first before you actually end up telling them or asking them about what they're doing.
Seek to understand, then be understood.
Ah,
that may be what you're referring to.
I'm going to write that one down. That is a very good line.
And it's actually a lot more enjoyable, because when you're asking someone about him or her, you're learning about that person. I'm talking separate from the business situation that's at hand, but you're just learning about that person. So that, from a human standpoint, I have always found very interesting. But from a pure business standpoint, in a pragmatic sense, yes, as you said, you want to learn about the person with whom you're dealing, his or her goals, his or her motivations in a particular situation, instead of just saying in your mind and in actuality, this is basically what I have in here. Let's see what you think of it. That's not going to promote or enhance a relationship, nor is it going to get you to the end result, which is a sale or an investment. And actually, any kind of when you're trying to make a sale or something of that sort, as we're referring to, it's a win-win situation. You want the person who's coming into the relationship with you to feel very good about what he or she is doing, and you want to feel good. So it should be a synergistic relationship,
which is very key to the whole process. Otherwise, you're just kind of one-sided, and probably the odds of you getting money out of this person is going to be very low if you're just telling them about what you have versus what they might need.
And yeah, number one, and also I would take that even a step further. If you do end up getting a sale in that situation, or having them invest, but the person with whom you're dealing doesn't really feel good about the way it took place, or there wasn't enough of a relationship developed, then it could end up being, in essence, almost like just a transaction, and it would not beget future investment relationships. So a lot of times, an investment, or in the nonprofit sector, a gift, it's not the end of a certain relationship. It's just one step in a long sequence of a relationship. And I think that holds true whether it's in the nonprofit sector or if it's in the for-profit sector, because if I'm trying to get someone to invest in building A today, I'm certain there's a time down the road where I might want them to invest in building B. So it can only help to develop a relationship, and you do that through listening, through learning what they're looking for, as we've talked.
And your first transaction or your first interaction with this person may be completely non-profitable or non-binding, or nothing may come of it, but down the road you may find that to work very, very well. I know I've worked on relationships for 20 years where all of a sudden 20 years later you actually make some money out of that particular transaction. But the key is to have a genuine relationship with these people and enjoy what they're doing and talk with them and see where you go from there. At least that's my perspective.
I would agree, Bruce. And it's kind of interesting in my life in fundraising. I said I've been involved for 3 decades plus. Perhaps the first 75% of that, I was not on staff of an organization and thus advocating that organization. I was a consultant. So I would first have to establish a formal business relationship with an organization. So then when I would work with them, I would transition to now asking for people to give to that organization. So a lot of the things we're talking about in the for-profit arena with regard to, sales and relationships, I would have to do that initially before I could get inside and then work within the organization. So yes, there have been times where I may have made a sales presentation to XYZ institution, and for whatever reason, they went with another fundraising entity. But maybe 4, 5, 6 years, there have been a number of times, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the line, when they wanted to do something else, they came back to me and said, hey, would you like to make another formal proposal? And I did, and I ended up getting the business. So I've been very fortunate in that I've had to deal with kind of establishing the relationship from the formal business for-profit side, for-profit being for the company for which I was working. And then again, once in the organization, now I'm fundraising in a nonprofit sense. So again, it's been very stimulating to work on both sides of that equation.
Well, and it sounds like you maintain maybe some relationship with this group that initially didn't hire you, and then down the road they did hire you. So you
Yeah,
kind of kept that relationship going.
you keep the relationship going. And I always try to remember, I would ask in earnest when I did not get a particular contract, what could I have done better? I wouldn't really ask for what I did wrong. That's what I was getting at, but I would phrase it as, could you give me advice? Because can you give me advice? We're looking to the future together, not, hey, let's go back over what I did. I should have said X or Y. I mean, they're telling me that, but I think putting things in the future tense in almost any scenario is of great benefit.
Well, that brings up an interesting point that oftentimes when I'm trying to build a relationship with someone that I don't really know, I would go to them and just say, hey, I'm working on this particular project. Could you give me some advice on it? And not ask them for money or anything. I suspect that you have done this in numerous cases where you go to a particular person and say, hey, we're trying to raise money for this particular project. Can you give me some advice on how to do this? And
I
it ended up
certainly have. Has anybody ever, when you've asked for advice in any facet of your life, declined?
I'm trying to think. Probably not. Yeah.
No, I've never had. People love to give advice. And I'm not saying that because they love to hear themselves talk and dispense all their knowledge. I really think that deep inside people, there is a desire to help others. So if you go in if someone, not you per se, obviously any of us, goes in a very genuine way and say, hey, I'm looking at XYZ scenario. Can you give me some insights or advice in this or in this facet of it? People love to draw upon their own experiences because they want to see probably whatever that scenario is to be deepened, to be enhanced, to grow, whatever it is. And so they're more than happy to try to help move that along. People love to give advice for very good reasons, not because they want to sit there and pontificate. I've never had anyone say no.
I think you're right. I've never really thought about it, but I don't think anybody ever has no to saying advice. So let's get to the crux of the transaction, so to speak. You get to the point in fundraising, we call it the ask. You ask for money. In the for-profit world, we're basically doing an ask also. We're saying, okay, so you've got all the information, you don't have any more questions. What do you do now? How do you close the transaction?
Well, I've always, so you're talking for-profit right now?
Well, either way.
Okay. I've always said when I've done training, if you will, for nonprofit gift asking, it's not a case of if they say this, you say that. If they say that, because you want it to feel natural. I've always said it's the conviction you have in whatever the need is that you're advocating, combined with by the time you get to the ask, that you obviously can see, it's been demonstrated, the person with whom you're speaking has an interest. And they, even if they've never had an interest before, an interest I'm defining as they've never given to that before, you now can see they've asked enough questions, they're interested, you've presented the need, they've expressed an interest in making certain that that need is fulfilled in some manner. And it's matching their desire to assist with, again, your conviction and the kind of the overall goal that you both have, kind of the same North Star. So it's a diet. I'm backing up a half step. One of the worst things to do in fundraising is ask too soon. And I'm saying, both from the standpoint of you're most likely to not get someone to say yes, but probably even more kind of severe in terms of fundraising, the long-term relationship can be destroyed by a quick ask, because it moves it from, hey, this person who's coming to me and asking really cares about this organization, wants me to help, believes I can help, etc., to they just want to get some money, and it's almost like a transaction. And again, then it moves from a transaction, it moves from an investment in a need to just a transactional relationship. So you don't want to jump too fast. And can I tell you, oh, after X number of visits, that's the right time, or after this much time you spent with them, that's the right time? No, I think it's almost like a gut feeling. Okay, we have a relationship, we have a rapport. As you said a minute ago, Bruce, the person has asked questions, I've answered the questions, I've asked if there's any other information, and then it's like, gee, at this point, we would love you to consider, XYZ. Your gift can make you can make a transformational gift to our organization. And also, the one thing, you want to make every gift specific. People, as I think we all know, people aren't moved to give to help thousands of people, but people are moved to help one person. If you can tell one person's story, that's why all the commercials on TV for giving are about the little boy, the little girl, the family, whatever it is, because people are hardwired for stories, and they're hardwired to help one person overcome his or her circumstances.
So in this case, on a for-profit side, you're not actually giving money, you're investing money. And so in that case, you're similarly trying to convince or persuade or build the relationship to the point where the people think, oh, okay, this money, this investment I'm making is going to be safe. It's going to give me a good return. It's very similar to the nonprofit world in that they don't want to give to something where all the money goes to the organization and none of it goes to the actual item that they are proposing the money would be benefiting. So anyway.
No, that's right. I mean, the variables which are going to be critical are going to be, as you said, safety of the money, security of the money, return on the money, and depending on the person with whom you're speaking, and this is where asking a lot of questions in advance and doing your own kind of, for lack of a better term, reconnaissance work comes in. If it's an apartment building, is it a low income apartment building? So you can say, gee, this will help, X number of families. I mean, in some cases, that may be irrelevant. They're looking purely at the bottom line, the pro formas, boom, boom, boom. But there may be other people to whom that would be very significant. Through your investment, you're going to do this, and you're going to help, benefit this community, and so on and so forth. So again, it's learning as much as you can about the person or persons with whom you're speaking, and tailoring, if you will, your presentation when it comes right down to it, to what it is most important to them. And that's not, sales in a kind of manipulative way. That is trying to make certain that you are filling the needs of the person with whom you're dealing. So again, if you're speaking with someone in the for-profit, yes, maybe it is purely balance sheet, profit loss, purely a perfunctory financial relationship and exchange. But at the same time, I think the foundation is the same in terms of they have to trust you. So it's people, they're giving to you because they believe in you. People give to people. You're asking questions. What is it? What is the case for support? Why do they want to give to that organization? How can you help them see that that's something viable? So I think the basics are the same. The underpinnings are identical.
So then you get to the point where you said you have to make a very specific ask. So are you talking, I know when I did fundraising for Crystal Springs Upland High School, they said, okay, when you go in and you finally get to the ask point, always ask for twice as much as you expect to receive. I don't know if that's true in your world at all, but and then they always said, okay, you make the ask, but then you're quiet.
I would say I'll go with the latter first. Yes, I would say people see I'll put it this way. Nobody has ever come to me after the dozens and dozens and dozens of trainings and fundraisings I've done, fundraising campaigns I've led and been involved in, and said, you know, I'm so happy that you came. I've always wanted to go out and ask my friends for money, but many people have after the fact said, you know, that was really great because the money raising was kind of a byproduct of it. It was about the relationship. And what I was going to tie it to was people, it's not natural for people to ask their friends or others for money. So when people ask for money, there's a tendency to overtalk because you're nervous. Hey, would you make a gift of such and such? Oh, it's a great product. Keep talk. And it is very useful and beneficial to just be quiet and let the person respond. So I would concur 100% with that. Now, as far as asking what you said, as far as the former issue, asking for twice as much, there are various arguments about that. I think that goes back into, you know, researching as much as possible before you make an ask. I will say this, you want to ask for more than you believe the person can give, because people are always going to come down to a level. I shouldn't say always, almost always. Very rare is there going to be a situation in which you'll say, can you give $5,000? Yeah, you know what, I'll give you 10,000. That rarely happens, but almost always people will, can you give us 10,000? Well, I'll give you 5. So I don't know about twice as much as just a hard, fast rule, but you always want to ask for more because people, it's natural, they will come down. So if you say, hey, we want to ask someone for $5,000, actually another way to say it is you never ask for the full amount. Unless you're in an annual project, even in an annual project, you don't say it's much better instead of saying, can you give $3,000 this year? Could you give $250 a month each month for the year? Right. And the reason, I mean, 250 is smaller, it's more manageable, and I think people break things down into kind of monthly expense. Just like, can you give 5,000 over 5 years? It's more, can you give 1,000 a year for 5 years? Well, I can give 1,000 a year for 5 years. That's no problem. So those are some of the, when I do get into training, I said a lot of it's kind of, you know, relationship and it's not scientific, but there are 3 or 4 or 5 things, and you touched on a couple that we do say, yes, when it comes to phrasing, say it this way versus that way, but it's not painting someone into a corner where they can't say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no.
Yeah, no, that reminds me of the story. I believe it was Oracle. You know, they sell software, and any software group. So the software essentially costs them zero once they've made it. So, you know, it's ongoing costs and so forth, but there's no actual kind of hard product cost to it. So they used what was called the flinch factor for selling software. Have you ever heard this?
No, but I can guess, but go ahead. Flinch.
So
yeah.
The flinch factor is okay, it's going to cost you, you know, $50,000. And if there's no flinch there, they didn't say, well, that's per month. And then they kind of go down, okay, well, that's per module, per, and then they keep kind of going down to the point where the person that they're selling to finally goes, whoa, whoa, whoa. And they say, okay, that's the flinch factor of selling. So anyway, I've always been
have
amused
not
by
heard that. That's very interesting. I've heard something like that in different forms. I've never heard that term. I like that. No,
But in fundraising, it's sort of the opposite way. Well, okay, could you give $50,000? But okay, and they might flinch at that, but you could say, oh, well, could you give this much per month? And then that would add up to $50,000.
Every gift chart for every campaign I've ever been involved in, whether the overall ask was $50,000 or $1,000, we would have right in front of the person who's being asked on the chart, this is X, whatever, 50,000. How much per year? How much per quarter? How much per month? Because again, people budget things in much smaller time segments, and a smaller number is obviously much. Can you give $50,000? Well, I don't know. Can you give $10,000 a year for 5 years? Gee, I could probably give $10,000 a year for 5. So it's you just do it in that way.
Yeah.
Do it in that way.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. Well, Rod, this has been very fun and very productive. I have enjoyed conversing with you. And if somebody wanted to actually converse with you or talk to you, how would they reach you?
They can, my cell phone number. I'm happy to answer questions and help in any manner possible. They can reach me, cell or email. My cell, should I just give it? You want me to just?
Sure, why not?
650-302-0094. And my email is just my name at yahoo.com. So no caps, no underslash, RODLIN as in Nancy, HARES as in Sam, Rod Linhares at yahoo.com. And I'm, again, happy to, because it's very interesting to me. It's a lot of fun. And I feel very fortunate. I have met so many people who work in the nonprofit arena, regardless of the type of organization, that are just devoting their lives to benefiting and enhancing the lives of others. And there's no interest there's no self-interest. It's interest in maximizing their, well, I like how to say, personal public relations. It's very much an inspiration to get to know people like I've been able to cross paths with.
Well, I've always been inspired by you myself. So it's been great talking with you, and I appreciate your time.
Bruce, my pleasure anytime. Thank you.
We'll talk soon.
Yes, we shall.
Oh, wait, here we go.
That's a wrap on today's journey through the SF commercial real estate scene. Ready to share your story? Visit sfcommercialconversations.com/guest. Your insights could lead the next conversation.